I don't know what it is, but the day the kids go back to school in the fall, it seems like the temperature drops and you feel like cooking again. And today I'm going to make some chicken noodle soup. I made some a couple weeks ago to take up to Bonnie, and I thought, why didn't I film that? We're going to start with a rotisserie chicken. You can start with a whole raw chicken, you know, that come in a bag if you prefer, but it's just easier for me, and the cost is really about the same if I just buy a rotisserie chicken and use that. I like to use whole chickens because I like the bones give it all that good flavor, and that's where that flavor comes from, really, is from the bones, not the meat. So I'm going to start with about a half a pot of water. And I like to use a big pot. This is an 8-quart pot. 10-quart is preferred, but I gave my 10-quart pot to Bonnie, so I'm going to use the 8-quart pot right now. And I'm going to put that whole thing, including the juice, especially the juice, into this pot of water. Even though this has already been cooked, I'm going to put it in the water, bring it to a boil, and when the meat starts falling off the bones, then I'll take the meat out and probably cook the bones just a little bit longer. And then, anyway, I'll take you through it. I'll show you what I'm doing. Once the meat is cooked and it starts falling off the bones, I take the thing out. And I will separate the meat from the bones. Put that. Now that I've got my chicken pulled off of the carcass, and that's the garbage skin left over, I put my carcass back in the water and I'm going to let that boil. I should have my onion in there. I've got to hurry and get my onions and celery in there right now. So while my vegetables are cooking, I'm going to show you how I make my egg noodles. And to tell you the truth, I probably should have started with the egg noodles. It doesn't matter, but the longer you leave the egg noodles out to dry, there's a different texture to them. If you let your egg noodles dry out completely, they're kind of a slick texture. And if you put the egg noodles in before they've dried out, it's a little thicker noodle. I don't know how to explain that, but it's true. The longer the noodles dry out, the more almost store-bought they feel, kind of more slippery, and they don't raise as much, I guess. I don't know, when they get into the water. I don't know what I'm saying. So while my soup is cooking, I'm going to show you how to make the egg noodles. And you can find this recipe in our Griffiths family cookbook, and I will leave the link in the description below. So I'm just going to follow this recipe for homemade noodles. The thing that I really like about making soups and stews is you cannot go wrong. You fill a pot with water or whatever, vegetables, and you cook it, and it just always tastes good. And so you are not going to mess up a recipe, because this is just the way I do it. You might find your own technique. You might say, oh, but my mother did it this way, and that's great. Just make the soup and it'll be good, I promise you. When we were working on the cookbook, I measured everything and then I wrote it down, you know, what I added to my soups. But today I'm just cooking like I always do, and the only thing that I will follow is the egg noodle recipe that's in the cookbook. The rest of it, I just throw it in the pot. So the recipe calls for 2 cups of flour and a teaspoon of salt, and 3 egg yolks and 1 whole egg, and then 2/3 cup of water. Mix it until you can form a little ball, about like that. So dust your countertops, like so. Put your ball of dough right there on it. Now, these are granite countertops and I can cut on them, but I am still very, very, very careful when I do it. So I'm just going to cut this right down the middle, like that, and give myself plenty of room to work. Make sure it's not sticking anywhere. Okay, just be real careful. See, I'm not going like this across my counter. I'm just breaking them apart with the knife, cutting it with the knife. If you like a fatter noodle, a wider noodle, then make them wide. If you want a really little one, just do a little tiny cut. I find they get bigger when you put them in the water, so I don't make them too terribly wide, and I don't like to roll them out too thin because then it's really hard to cut them. So just do it about like this. These have enough air and move pretty easily. Then you know that they'll dry. When I want to make something really special for someone, this is the recipe that I use. It's not something you can throw together very fast. So unless you've got a good portion of the day, it's not a good idea to start this at 6 o'clock at night. I guess that's what I'm saying. It takes a while to make it. Not that it's not difficult to make. It just seems like by the time you start it and finish it, you're tired. But boy, there is no comparison between homemade chicken noodle soup and something that you open from a package or a can. And I do both. But like I said, if I've got somebody really special that I just think a lot of and want to do something a little bit nicer, this is what I'll make them. There is healing power in chicken noodle soup. Homemade chicken noodle soup. So I'll just let these sit here and dry out. All right, so now my vegetables are done. They are not mushy. In fact, they've got a little bit of firmness to them, and that's a good thing because you want to make sure that the vegetables are not too done, because they're going to be cooking even longer when you add the noodles to the pot. And so just make sure that there's plenty of firmness in them, that everything comes, it's crazy. You want everything to come done at the same time, and so you just watch it. So now I'm going to remove the bones from my soup. See how that thing just falls apart? And there's still some meat on there that I can pick off and put back in here, but I just did not want to cook the meat as long as I did everything else, where it was already a cooked rotisserie chicken, you see. My family, they know I'm really, really picky, and I make sure that the bones are out of here, but every once in a while, I'll miss one. Looks like it's just good vegetables. I'll do my noodles, or I'll add the noodles to it, and then I'll put the chicken back in it, and it will be done. As these have been drying, I've moved them around a little bit on my cabinet so they wouldn't stick together and so that they would have some air to dry out a little bit better. I'm going to bring the heat back up on my stove first, and then I will add the noodles. It takes just about 15 minutes for these to cook in the pot. And when I take the noodles, I take the flour that's with it. And I'm gonna let that cook so those noodles get tender for about 15 minutes. These have been cooking for about 15 minutes now, and they look pretty good. All the vegetables are kind of underneath, down in there. So now that the chicken noodle soup is done, I've had my chicken sitting in the refrigerator, and I'm just going to add it back into my soup. Those vegetables are down underneath. They're in there. You're just not seeing them. This will make a really good dinner.